It's a pleasure to welcome you all here to BSC. BSC is a culinary store across the street from the Department of Building Inspection, and we're here for our brown bag lunch where we're going to talk about home kitchen remodel. I want to introduce Andre Rothblatt, an award-winning local architect from many years. Andre and I have been friends, and he specializes in residential remodel work, as far as I know, and is a real kitchen expert. And Rachel Weidinger, my good friend, who is going to cook our gougere today. And she has a blog called A Kitchen of Her Own .blogspot.com, right? And for the first time in her life, Rachel has her own kitchen. And what is that like, Rachel?
It's fantastic. It's really tiny, like a lot of San Francisco kitchens. But I have an oven and a stove that I love, so.
And no remodeling in the works?
Not yet.
No. So a lot of people want their own kitchen, and they want their own kitchen to reflect their needs and their uses and their desires, and maybe reflect other things in their mind and their life. What do you think, Andre? What drives people to want to remodel their kitchens?
Well, there's lots of reasons. Really, kitchens have become the most important room in the house, and people use it as a means to express themselves. They use it for investment purposes, and it's really they're kind of become status symbols. So people want really handsome kitchens that again reflect and express their own personal style.
Right. So I see a lot of people come into the building department with dreams of renovating their house so that it's a palatial kitchen, and often they have to be brought down to some kind of reasonable level in terms of the cost and the realities of it. Is that what happens typically for you when you look at people's anticipated kitchen?
Well, it all depends, and it depends on when I get to meet with them. So if I could meet with them early on, I can give them kind of a reality check. But San Francisco is a very expensive city for construction. It's I read a statistic. It's the second most expensive city in the country for construction, second only to Manhattan, New York. And so you have to be realistic. And but if you have a good design professional working with you, we usually can meet most of your goals and your budget. So. Mm-hmm.
And I just want to emphasize to everybody that working with a design professional, as you know if you've been watching our Brown Bag Lunch Talks, I believe, working with a design professional, whether it's an architect or a kitchen designer, an engineer, or somebody who's actually trained and understands what's going on, will ultimately be in your best interest. A lot of people say, it's a kitchen, I'll use it, I can figure it out myself. To be successful, you typically do need somebody who has a broader range of understanding. So what makes a successful? So there's the question. To be successful, what would make it successful? What's a successful project?
Well, obviously, good planning. It's also investigating the conditions, existing conditions, so you can anticipate problems. So for instance, people will place a sink there or place a stove there, not realizing that we have to put ducts and we have to put pipes. And so if we know, early on that there's a beam there and then we can't do it, mm-hmm. and we know that from the onset, we can work
right.
around it.
But successful means that at the end of the project, it has met your goals. You're satisfied. You're happy. It hasn't exceeded your budget by more than twice.
Absolutely, yeah.
It hasn't taken more than twice as long as you imagined, right?
Yeah, the whole kind of the purpose of working with an architect or designer doing drawings is that you could kind of visualize things before. You can, in a graphic sense, kind of anticipate the conflicts. You could you could locate your appliances. You can negotiate with all the windows and doors and beams. Yeah. You could do your lighting. You could do your tile patterns. You could, again, anticipate any conflicts on paper before you start. Right. And so the more drawings that you do, the less problems you have during construction. So.
Right. And actually, in San Francisco, we see so many people start a project, and then they come in for a permit revision because when they started the work, they found that there was something that they hadn't anticipated. They opened up a wall, and oh my God, there's plumbing in that wall. We had no idea. Now we can't just remove the wall. Or, there's dry rot everywhere, or who knows what. So, the more work you do up front, the fewer of those revisions you have to do, and believe me, nobody wants to do a permit revision. Your contractor doesn't want that. because it slows down the project, right? And the contractor really wants it to go fast and smooth and be done so he or she can start the next project. That's how they operate. You don't want a permit revision. We certainly don't want to see any permit revisions. Okay, let's take a little quick change right here. I want to have Rachel tell us about gougere, and maybe even show us where you're getting the recipe from.
Certainly. Well, today we're going to quickly demonstrate a recipe from the Tartine cookbook. At Tartine, they have the most wonderful of French treats, gougere. That's Gougere, if you needed to spell that. And gougere are a savory French pastry. I like eating lots of them hot out of the oven with champagne, but you may have your own preference.
That sounds great. Here are les gougères. Isn't that beautiful? Ours will actually look even better than this when Rachel is finished cooking them.
Bite-sized treats.
Bite-sized treats made with Gruyere cheese. Yeah, go ahead. Tell us what you're up to.
And this is an unusual cooking process to a lot of people. It's very simple, but it starts off on the stove with 1.25 cups of milk. And for some reason, low-fat milk is specified, although I've used various kinds with fantastic effect. So we are going to boil together 1.25 cups of milk with 10 tablespoons of butter.
Ooh.
Instead of 18. So that's a stick and a little bit.
That's a lot of butter, isn't it?
That's why these are fun.
What kind of butter?
Is it unsalted butter should be ideally used?
I use unsalted for this so I can control the salt level, although they're really delicious salty with champagne. And for this I like to use a really nice quality butter because there's so much butter you're going to taste it. It's not a small element of the recipe, it's a large element. So use the highest quality. European butters or European style butters are fun. There's a really great Sierra cheese company actually makes a butter that's a cultured butter that's delicious.
And this is the Strauss. I think that's a European butter that we're using there. Here, I'm going to pass this recipe around for you guys. If you were to have the kitchen of your dreams, what kind of kitchen would that be to allow you to make gougere for your champagne parties?
Well, I love that I have a wall of ovens behind me. This is fantastic. Lots of times I wish I had double ovens. I've lived in houses with them before, and I miss them terribly now. Right now I have a very old vintage stove that actually is an oven with a proofing oven beside it, which is a kind of cool, hard to find thing.
What's a proofing oven?
A proofing oven is a temperature, it's so old that it's not highly temperature controlled, but it's an oven where you can put in yeast products to proof, to raise. So if you're making a yeast bread, I have a place in my kitchen to make that. With my modern urban lifestyle though, I'll make gougere, but proofing bread I usually don't have time for.
And in fact, my mother keeps saying, why don't you ever make wine? And I say, I live in the place that makes the best wine in the world. Why? It's like San Francisco you can buy the best bread.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be, but gougere, you could go to Tartine.
You can get that done. So this has come to a boil now, and I'm gonna incorporate the flour here, and it will thicken up and go towards lumpy. But we're fine. So the next step here, and this is kind of looks like cream of wheat. It's a gloppy mess.
Mashed potatoes.
Yeah, mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
It has so much butter in it, it probably tastes great.
So, Andre, I have a question. When you work with your clients about their kitchen needs, do you ever see them cooking in their house?
No, we interview them on their cooking styles and, whether they, stir fry or use a stovetop or they bake and, do they cook with their partner and is there a division of labor? We, kind of do an inventory of their pots and pans and appliances as well.
Nice. So. Which is an interesting thing about who does the cooking. I did a little bit of web research the other day, which talked about the differences of the way people cook today and in the 50s and earlier 60s when a lot of the older kitchens that we live in were done. And the most efficient kitchens designed in the 50s were based upon the fact that women were home cooking. They cooked from ingredients. They cooked from scratch. They typically worked alone. And they needed a relatively limited number of ingredients. And of course, none of those things seem to be true today. Is that